Game on. So a few weeks ago, I did an internet deep dive to find guests for the podcast. And my quest led me through the intricate world of sports analytics, the nuances of personal health data, and then quite unexpectedly into the mysterious realm of online dating analytics. Now, if you've ever ventured into the world of dating apps, you're well aware of the treasure trove they present for anyone intrigued by human behavior. They're a blend of the roller coaster of emotions we find in social media. They shed light on our inherent biases, our preferences, and dance on that delicate tightrope between who we are and how we choose to present ourselves. Online data for dating apps is difficult to find. Most of us are locked into our own personal data sets, but our guest today, Alyssa Fernandez, has remarkably cracked the code, and she analyzed over 550 individual profiles. And she's here to spill the beans, delve deep in the data, and answer the burning questions cast off on our behalf. So, Alyssa, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And Alyssa, other than a few back and forth messages over LinkedIn, Kaustoff and I don't know much about you. Would you mind sharing a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Alyssa, and I consider myself a jack of all trades, working to be a master of one. So it's been a long journey just trying to find what I'm interested in to really kind of focus my career on. Um, just background, I'm born and raised Texas from the North Texas area, went to school at UT Austin, graduated in 2017. And from there, I've had about not just four different jobs, but four completely different careers. And I started my most recent role last month. So just kind of like that summary is I started out as a Teach for America Corps member, then went to the Dallas Morning News as a researcher and archivist. From there, I transitioned into data journalism. And now I'm working as a special projects fellow for Food Tank. So more on like the
Awesome.
food policy side.
And where'd you go for Teach for America?
Bridgeport, Connecticut.
I've had a couple friends that have done that and loved it. Were you a big fan of it and happy you did it?
Well, I'm glad I got the life experience.
Gotcha.
I was going through your Medium posts and it was pretty fascinating. Before we kind of jump into the nitty-gritty of the detail, what I found fascinating is like, why did you decide to choose this as a subject that you wanted to study? What sort of prompted in your head, like, you know what, this is an interesting topic that I want to dive deep into?
Yeah. So I'm someone that has a very difficult time hiding if I'm not interested in something. Um, it's very clear, not just in my facial expression, but just in everything and how much effort I put into the work. So for context, I was working as a researcher and archivist in kind of traditional print journalism, and it's not the most financially lucrative career. So I decided I wanted to pivot into one that I started hearing a lot about, and it was data journalism. And I thought, oh, how hard can this be? Everyone says you can just learn how to code. So I found this program called the LEAD program run through Columbia University, headed by Jonathan Soma, and just thought, let me just quit my job, do this, and I'll find another job. So when I started diving into it, that's kind of where I first really started to learn in a much more organized way how to work with data in a manner a bit more sophisticated than just an Excel sheet. And Soma made it clear early on that we were going to have a final project that's kind of an accumulation of all the skills we learned, and just to kind of keep that on our mind throughout the summer. So I knew immediately that I wanted to do dating app data. Like that was my dream data set, because the time I was on Reddit a lot and I saw a lot of data's beautiful kind of flow charts of people's dating app data, and, people commenting on it like, oh, wow, this is what's wrong with men, women, everyone.
Reddit doing
And
what Reddit does.
yeah, yeah, pretty much everyone just arguing in the comments. And I go in,
Yeah.
who's looking at all this stuff? Like, I can do that.
This is
And
this
yeah.
is this is really fascinating because I remember when I went to business school, I have never used a dating app ever in my life. So because I was already married by that time.
You didn't miss out. You kind of missed out. Not really,
I,
though.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I
It's
never used one. And then in first year core strategy course, they give a case where you have to spend 7 hours come up with a strategy for a new dating app. And they had like a Harvard case study or something from Elsevier. It's like a 3-page on like all the dating apps and how starting from eHarmony, Match.com, all the way to like Tinder and everything else. I was like, oh, my team, we have to build a strategy for a new dating app. I've never used one. So that was, I think we all have used or have been exposed to dating apps in various different ways. Particularly find it fascinating that you can decide to focus on that topic.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's just because I had my own personal experience with it. And one of the most influential books I've read was Modern Dating by Aziz Ansari. I think I'm saying it correct. I have a copy
Yeah,
somewhere over there.
I've heard of that book. I've been told that
And
it's really good.
yeah, and it's very data heavy in its analysis. But it was the first time I ever got to see human behavior quantified. And so I was like, okay, this is a good way to start. And if you've ever used anything like YouTube Shorts or TikTok or even like Instagram Reels, I think dating apps were like the precursor of just the endless swiping.
Mhm.
So, yeah, like if you've used that and have found yourself on that for hours, then you can understand how you can do the same thing on a dating app until they tell you you've run out of singles in your area, which
That's a
it
depressing
does
moment. I've
happen.
been there.
Yeah, it's like increase a filter.
And could you give us a brief overview of the project, and then we'll kind of dive into the specific questions I have about the insights?
So the project was very open ended. It was more or less find a data set, do something with it. So I didn't really have any sort of sophisticated idea of something I wanted to answer. My main concern was just finding it. So spent a lot of time just looking around for it. I'd say that was like really the majority of it. And so since I was looking for it early, I just decided to kind of get creative and reach out to the people who own the websites that were creating the flowcharts. And that's how I was able to get the information. And from there, just the rundown of the project really was pretty much everything I used was stuff that I learned that semester. So I was just like stretching every muscle I could. It was like, okay, there's this one technique we learned. Can I use that? How deep can I go using pandas? Whatever. It was just kind of hodgepodge, kind of these beginner level Python data analysis was really kind of how I see it.
Yeah. So in your analysis, you talked about ghosting, and it was really interesting to me that the average number of times men ghosted was 18 per user, and the average number of times that women ghosted was 151 times per user. I figured that women ghosted more frequently just because they get reached out to more. So they just have, a larger number of people that they're speaking with. Therefore, they're probably going to ghost more. I didn't think it would be that drastic. Did you think that? Or is that exactly what you expected?
That's about what I expected. When I was in college, I lived in a co-ed apartment. So most of my roommates were guys.
Uh,
And yeah, we would just kind of like talk and exchange stories. And, they would go, oh man, today I actually got a match. Like, I'm going to reach out to this girl. I go, haven't you had this for, I don't know, several months? They're like, yeah, matches don't just fall out of trees. And my roommates were like great guys. They worked out. They were above average height, good looking. I'm like, and you're getting that few matches like on a any sort of basis. But they would also tell me their strategies on what they would do and then just start to theorize about how that might affect their placement in the algorithm. So I had all that context in the context of being a woman on the other side of it. So kind of putting it all together, I went, yeah, this seems about right.
There was this point you had, which is like, what is the minimum age that men versus females would match with, or what is the minimum age threshold? It's fairly close. It's 20 versus 23. But what were some of the hypotheses that you had when you're looking at that piece of data?
How I interpret it is, from what I've understood anecdotally and kind of backed up with this small sample, is kind of the goal on the male side is how do I maximize my matches? So that means kind of expanding your filters a bit more, whether that be by age range, distance, whatever other data frame that they may have included. And whereas for women, there's kind of an expectation that you're going to be a little more selective about what you'd like. And so I think that that kind of plays into that. And I don't know, I can just say it's seems, I'm not sure how to frame it, but especially with having like a higher minimum age, but I think women are more open to date someone older than they are someone younger. But again, that's just purely anecdotal. And the thing that is missing from how I grabbed this data is comparing the averages of age filters to the age that person was when they were making it. So
Yeah, that was one of the other questions I had. So this data set that you had, it had a lot of valuable information about conversations and age ranges and number of matches, number of ghosts that you calculated. But what data wasn't in there that you really wish you could have analyzed?
I really wish I had the respond data to the text. So when I was working on this, um, it was starting to dawn on me what I actually wanted to do with data as I
Mhm.
was kind of progressing. And my dream thing that I wanted to do was be able to build a language model to analyze flirtation. But I don't really think that's possible without finding a way to look into the response to it as well, because it's a two-way street.
Mhm.
It's how do you measure a successful conversation? Is there a way to, quantify banter or winking emojis or whatever else and kind of give it a score to see if there's any sort of success that can be had?
Yeah,
When
I have
success here
not.
being is, yeah, continuing the conversation. But go on.
Yeah, I haven't had much success at all. Like calculating emotions from just large sample text. Like every time I've done it in analytics projects, it says, oh, 50% of these messages were positive and 20% were really angry. But then when I actually click into the data set and I look at it, like it's totally inaccurate. Um, but this was like 3 years ago when I was deep into that stuff. Kostov, have you done any projects like that where you were analyzing sentiments and it was actually successful and worthwhile?
Yeah, I mean, I think done a lot of the sentiment analysis, but I've done it around net promoter score. So
Mhm.
the question, I think what matters is the question that you ask and the response that you analyze, because a lot of human conversation is open-ended, is very hard to get a very good, accurate sentiment around it, because you're almost always middling. You're ecstatic probably 5% of the time, and you're extremely sad about 5% of the time, and then the rest of the time you're like in the middle range. Whereas with like net promoter score, you ask a very specific question. Would you recommend product X to your friends or colleague? And you're a promoter when you are 9 or 10, and you are a detractor between 1 and 6. And when you ask for feedback, people tend to pour themselves out when you want to pour themselves out. And that way you get much stronger sentiment around customer feedback. So when you look at it from a customer feedback perspective, yeah. But when you look at from a human conversation perspective, they can mean a multitude of things. It's mostly in the gray.
Yeah, that's been my experience too.
I found like the analysis that you did around emoji comparisons, I found like that very, very, very interesting. I think you started with the hypothesis you don't want to see the laughing with tears anymore. And how did that make you feel when you got that data back?
Not surprised. And I warmed up to it a bit more. I still wouldn't ever use it, but it's, I don't know. I think that's what I really wanted to do. I would still want to do some sort of language analysis model on this because I find that at least the ones that I learned about back in 2021 when I was doing this is that it was rating words. And you could even see this like on SEO checkers online. It's, oh, you use the word deep. Deep is a strong, emotive word. You're going to gather more clicks on this. Whereas stuff like the or and is less so. But I think that and I still think that there is a way to catch it and make sense of it. And I think I feel so strongly about this too, is just because it reminds me of linguistic classes I used to take back in the good old days. And you would kind of have to map out what sentences meant and its sentiment, but break it down into however many deeper levels there could be, how one sentence can be interpreted however many different ways. So it was more just like wanting to apply similar principles, and even how often you misspelled a word, is it intentionally misspelled or not, would be used as part of it. But what I was figuring out as I was doing this is that is just like light years ahead of the current skill set that I have. So it would have been a long journey to be able to answer that specific of a question.
I think
Yeah.
you should keep going on the project. I think it's interesting and so few people are talking about it. Like I found your analysis and I found like maybe two others, but like people are interested in that. Like it's such like a fun, touchy subject that I feel like the more data you can gather, the more analysis you can do on it. Like people are going to be interested in that. I'm definitely interested in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have seen like people do analysis on dating data to say like, okay, does it based on different countries, different regions, how the behavior change? Because ultimately you're trying to pinpoint a numerical way of explaining human behavior as complex as love. So it's a fascinating area of study. One question I had on the back of that is, you did this during the peak of COVID, right? As you was kind of going on, do you think that had anything? People were at homes at that point. Do you think that had anything to do with any behavior that you've seen in that cohort of data?
In that case, the one that immediately comes to mind is COVID's impact meant that there were some weird COVID pickup lines, where just people would make fun of it and spam that to like 20 different women.
Copy and paste the same one.
Yeah, they were just copy pasting that. So it's a strategy. I saw it a lot. But I think the other, and I would need to have kind of past data to compare it to, because this was kind of that in between like end of 2019 to 2021 period where the data was collected, that
That was the time frame of the
I
data set.
I believe so. If
Okay.
I remember correctly. Is that I see that, like, my hypothesis for that would be that dating apps kind of became more the medium of communication instead of the conduit. So I think like its original intention is to kind of get people to actually meet and interact. Or maybe that's not exactly the intention, but that's the goal of the user. Whereas when you have 2019 come around, it's used as a platform to meet people, to have social interaction, whether or not that might stay on the dating app or kind of evolve beyond. But I also think that they've done a really good job trying to transition to it. So I know like Bumble for sure, they started including like video chats right around the pandemic where you could talk and have virtual dates and they would just like have prompts pop up on your screen as you're chatting, etc. I'm not sure if Tinder did that, but I assume they would do something similar to kind of cater to quarantine orders.
And did you look at any data or talk to anybody that's done an analysis on payments? So like people that had subscriptions and like how much people were spending on subscriptions for like the dating apps. That's one that I'd be really interested in.
I have not. There was nothing to suggest like if the user was paying for the app or
Yeah,
not. But I would like to know too.
I know. I want this data to be public. Obviously these dating apps would never release that information, but man, that it would just be a treasure trove. It'd be so much
I've
fun.
tried to I've tried a few times since I don't live too far from the Match office and they own Tinder among other dating apps and to apply for some of their data jobs, but I gave it my best shot to try to snoop in even more.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna find someone who worked at Match.com as an analyst. Hopefully, they don't have any non-disclosure agreement because I want to ask them so many more questions.
Do you think depending on the app behavior would be different? For example, let's say Tinder versus, and you mentioned, so depending upon the app you're kind of considering with the cost rates, if you take cost rates as a metric, do you think cost rates would be different based on how the mechanics of the platform works?
Would ghost rates be different? I'd say not really. Maybe the order would look a little different, but probably the rate wouldn't be that dramatic of a shift. It's like with Bumble, since the woman does have to initiate the message, similar tactic. Woman then starts to blast a message before the 24-hour clock would end. And that's just more to keep her matches. Or if she didn't send that message, would that be the equivalent of the ghost of, oh, this person I swiped right on, I decide I really don't like so much. That could be, I'd say almost in the same category as a ghost as well.
Got it.
And did you have data on height? So like you had the age of the people, the average age. Did you have any data on height? My assumption is that the taller guys get ghosted way less.
I did not have hack data. I think that might be more of an option in different apps because I know for sure Bumble emphasizes height a lot more than
And
say
Hinge.
Tinder and Hinge, yeah, because those apps are more for like those are more of the curating apps, like curate
Uh-huh.
the person you're trying to date. Whereas I think Tinder is like a lot more egalitarian, so I
Yeah,
have like
yeah.
a soft spot for it. It's just it's a free for all. We're all equals out there.
And from a technical standpoint, what skills did you learn doing this project? Like what were the main things that you learned technically from this project?
I'd say this is what really reinforced the syllabus that I learned from the lead program. I learned how to work with APIs, CSV, JSONs. I hate JSONs. For the
Wait till you
record,
see YAMLs.
yeah, I got to work with Python. I pretty much just stayed in the Python route. I was too much of a baby to really like go into JS because I really wasn't in it for the visuals. But yeah, those were the kind of the basics of it.
Mhm.
I'm friends with a lot of computer scientists, and so they always like to kind of tease me and give me a hard time with my programming level. But they thought it was kind of a fun project. But they were like, you really could have done this or that or blah 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 and expanded on that. I'm like, were you gonna do it? Like, feel free
Yeah,
to.
yeah. That's what I'm doing. Like, oh, did you have this day? Did you have this day? You're like, screw you, find it yourself.
Usually saying, and I'm telling you, Parker, why don't you do this project? And then you
No, because I'm looking for some kind of project next month where I'm just taking in new data weekly and doing an analysis on it. I'm just trying to find a data set that I'm interested in. So I've been looking at like weekly NFL data, but if I can find, a big data set like the one that you did for Tinder, I
Mhm.
would love to do that. Just because it's the perfect mix of like interesting analytics and like very touchy hypotheses and insights.
Mhm. Yeah.
Does Tinder have an API that you can use to pull data?
Nope.
No. I guess
No.
yeah.
Oh, I bet that information's got to be so protected. So the
I
data you got was people that freely shared their own data, right?
Yeah. I've had a lot of folks still now just message me asking for the data sets, and really now on principle, I just don't share it anymore because I
Yeah,
found
yeah.
that when I was actually looking through the conversations, it just straight up had people's phone numbers and addresses and everything. And I went, ah, ethically, I don't think it's right for me to release this into the ether.
Yeah, yeah. To share it to the public, obviously, but like those people gave you access to it, so it's okay that you have it. Just not okay that the rest of the world does.
Yeah, and that's kind of my main thing. So I am gatekeeping a little bit,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah,
gatekeeping. There's some folks there who tried their best.
yeah, yeah. I respect that.
Mhm.
No, because there is a lot of social engineering that goes on these days, and you look for any data anywhere that you can associate with a real person. As long as you can associate any data with a real person, and that's a social engineer's best game. They
Mhm.
feel very, very happy.
I know it was really fun. I think if there's anything like reflecting wise, is that I think it's harder to find data sets that are interesting. 'Cause there's data sets everywhere, but what's going to be one that actually captivates your attention thoroughly?
When you were doing the project, was there anything that you found particularly hard, that was challenging?
Cleaning it up. Yeah.
It,
So I went in thinking, oh, I can just double click this and it'll open up. And nope, that was not the approach for it.
It's
So
never that easy.
no, I'd say like about 85% was just spent cleaning it up and organizing it. And the rest was kind of the slapped together analysis.
did you do all of it in in Python, or did you try to find like off the shelf tools that you can just upload a JSON and it gives you a nice representation and you just clean it out from there, something of that sort?
A mix of both. Um, all um, all the information was just in one big JSON file. So I don't even remember exactly what I did. It was just kind of like it was late. I was feeling delirious and frustrated. I couldn't figure it out through Python. And I just found one website where I uploaded it and it split it for me, but it happened to split it by every single person. And I still don't know how it did it like that perfectly, but it did.
Somebody figured it out, how to speak JSON.
Yeah, someone did. And I thank them a lot for it.
Yeah, this project would have been much easier for you had ChatGPT been around back then. Because you could have just like given it all the
Yeah.
sample data and be like, hey, can you just do this one thing for me? Boom, you're golden.
Yeah. I think probably would have written a lot cleaner code too if ChatGPT was around. I'm not against AI or anything like that. I think it's a helpful tool.
Absolutely. As long as it's not AI Tinder profiles, that's when I'm against it. Not cool with that. I'm okay being ghosted. I'm not okay being ghosted by some AI.
I don't know. I think we've already had like the precursor to that with the bots.
Yeah, no kidding. Half of Twitter. Well, Alyssa, thank you very much for joining us. We really enjoyed that conversation. I really enjoyed the analysis that you did. And when we post this, I'll make sure that people can view your analysis. And if I don't do analysis on dating apps, I really hope you'll continue it because I'm really interested in it.
Yeah, it's been a walk down memory lane. So
Thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure I'll talk to you soon in the future.
Thanks
all right,
for
sweet.
your time.
Great talking to y'all. Bye.
Yeah.